Bird of heaven, wonderful country somewhere, beautiful story of glory, land of delight so fair, Eden sweet home of God.
Is watching an R-rated movie bad? Aren't you glad I'm answering that and not you? Folks, the rating system for our movies is done by what is known as the Motion Picture Association of America, the MPAA. And our present rating system of movies has been around since 1990. That's 28 years since the rating system has been changed at all in the United States. Presently, for movies, there are 5 different ratings that can be given: G, PG, PG-13, R, and NC-17. G, general audiences. Everybody can go. There's nothing bad. Everything is acceptable. Even for little bitty babies, you're more than safe to take them. Then there's the next one, PG, parental guidance. Now what it says is this: if you have children that are little, usually under the age of about 8 years old or so, then parents, you need to use a little bit of caution, because there might be something in there that may not be suitable for those smaller children. Then PG-13. That just raises the age limit just a little bit to 13 years of old. Parents, beware. If you have children that are under the age of 13, you better be careful of this movie. Then there's R. No one is admitted under the age of 17 unless you have a parent or a guardian with you. And then lastly, NC-17. What that's supposed to mean is this: nobody, I don't care if you've got someone there who is over the age of 17 or not, nobody under the age of 17 is admitted into those movies. Now, as I said, those ratings are given by the Motion Picture Association of America. Folks, they base those ratings on 5 major categories of content in movies. One of them is violence. How much violence does a movie contain? It could involve just the slap of one person against another, or it could involve some very horrific scenes such as in horror films. It may be a war scene of a movie, so they judge it by violence. Secondly, by the language that is used. How vile and how crude and how evil is the language that is found in that movie. Another thing is substance abuse. Is there anything in there about alcohol? Is there anything in this movie about drug addiction and things of that nature? Then the third thing is nudity. There can be partial nudity, there can be full nudity, frontal nudity, rear nudity. There's all kinds of standards that they look at. And then lastly, how much sexual content is in this movie. Now, there are a group of individuals who watch a movie, look at these different categories, and make application to the movie and say, well, this movie, based upon this, and this, ought to be PG-13, or ought to be R, or ought to be G, or whatever it might be. Now, I still haven't answered the question, have I? Is going to an R-rated movie bad? Folks, the answer generally that I would give is this: every movie has to be judged individually. Now let me tell you why I say that. There can be G-rated movies who might contain anti-Christian themes. There may be a movie that appears to be perfectly acceptable to all individuals, and yet that movie might teach the theory of evolution within it. Now, our world has no problem with that, but what about us as Christians? We do have a problem with that, don't we? Or that movie might in some way poke fun at someone who is spiritual in nature, or maybe it makes fun of a father in that particular film. Oh, it's acceptable, it's okay, nobody gets hurt, but maybe it's got some anti-Christian themes in it. Notice also, there are some PG movies that can have profanity within them. You see, the rating system says if profanity is absolutely necessary in order to make this scene what it needs to be, then we will allow it. So you may have a child that's under the age of 7 or 8 years old that you allow to go see a PG movie, and it may have cursing within it. What about these PG-13 movies? Folks, they can contain sexual words and even nudity. Again, it's determined by those individuals who do the ratings and whether they think it is absolutely necessary in the movie. Now watch this. You may go to an R-rated movie and it's rated that way solely because of the violence. There's no cursing. There's no nudity. There's no sexual expression whatsoever in it. The only thing that is bad is the fact that it is a war movie and there is much violence contained in there. And because of that, they have rated the movie R. Now, what about NC-17 movies, folks? Those are the movies that before 1990 used to be referred to as X-rated. Okay? We don't have that particular rating anymore. Now it's just NC-17. So in other words, if you're over 17 years of age, you can go see an X-rated movie as far as the Motion Picture Association of America is concerned. That's amazing, isn't it? Now, there's some things that Christians do need to think about before they go see movies. And there are some dangers that are connected to going to see movies in our society. And folks, I'm talking from the standpoint of a person who loves to go see movies. I could go see one almost every day because I just enjoy going. I like the popcorn as much as I like the movie. Here's the first danger: desensitization. One of the things that Satan wants to do in our society is to desensitize us to sin and evil and wickedness. When you turn to Jeremiah chapter 6, verse 15, the Bible says this: "Were they ashamed when they committed sin? Nay, they were not at all ashamed, neither could they blush." Folks, there are some things in our world that are nasty, that are crude, that are evil. And when we see those things, you and I ought to be ashamed. You and I ought to feel a sense of embarrassment. You and I, when we see those things, we ought to blush because they are things that are only to be either seen or done in private. And yet here they are over a big screen. And over the course of time, when we go view those things, we become desensitized, don't we? You can go sit through an entire movie, 2.5 hours, and you'll walk out and you say, you know, that was a good movie. And there wasn't much cussing in there. And I don't even remember one scene that had any kind of sexual expression at all. Then you go look it up, and guess what? You find out that there were 30 or 40 curse words, and there were a couple of scenes that were not too correct in that movie. And because we've been so desensitized, we don't even recognize it anymore. And see, what happens is they can just continue to up the ante over time, can't they? It began with one cuss word and Gone with the Wind. And now, just listen to what we hear even on television shows today. So there is a desensitization. Number 2, you and I are not to conform to this world. Be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Folks, God does not want us acting like the world. He doesn't want us talking like the world. He doesn't want us to be absorbed in any shape, form, or fashion by the world. And our participation in movies sometime can have a tendency to cause us to conform to the world. What about this one? Calling evil good. The Bible warns against that in Isaiah 5:20. Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness. You and I may go to a movie that has numerous curse words, a couple of scenes of nudity, and we leave the movie and we say, whoo, boy, that was a great movie. And we just go around telling all of our friends that, oh, you need to go see that movie. It was a wonderful movie. And yet it was full of profanity, corrupt language, and things that God forbids. You see, we have a tendency to, like we say, be desensitized and then call those things that are evil good things. How about this one? Do we really need to be using our funds to support something that is ungodly? Ephesians 5 verse 11, have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them. Isn't it amazing that we don't hesitate to go spend $10, $12 on a movie ticket, and yet if the church asks us for a little additional money for a missionary, we go crazy over that? It's amazing, isn't it? But you see, we don't need to be supporting that which is corrupt and vile. And then lastly, does going to view this movie harm my Christian example? Let no man despise thy youth, but be thou an example of the believers in word and conversation, in charity, in spirit, in faith, in purity. Folks, those 6 areas, you and I are supposed to be examples to others. If the Lord were here and we had plans to go see a movie tonight, could we say, Lord, why don't you come and watch this movie with us? Folks, if you wouldn't take the Lord, you don't need to go. You know it? Because you know your Christian example would be harmed, wouldn't it? Now, the overriding thing that I like to tell people is this, folks, regardless of what we do, whatever you say, whatever you watch, however you behave, you have to be willing to go stand before God in judgment for that, don't you? If you choose to go see a movie, then guess what? You're going to have to stand before God and be judged for seeing that movie. The Bible plainly tells us, for we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that everyone may what? Receive the things done in his body according to that he hath done, whether it be good or bad. It doesn't matter. God is going to bring every work into judgment, and we'll be held accountable for those things. So if I choose to go see this movie, I need to ask myself some questions, don't I? Is it going to harm my Christian example? Do I really be needing to give my funds to this particular thing? Is it something that I'm going to call good when in actuality it is evil? Is it going to cause me to conform to this world? Am I going to be desensitized to the evil that is in the world because of my viewing of it? And folks, ultimately, am I willing to stand before my God and give an account for seeing this particular film? Important questions that we need to ask ourselves.